Actually, I'm up here to leave you with a few thoughts. I know there's, for most of you, a much more important announcement coming right after this. But it's important to me to put what we're doing here in some context, especially for those of us based in Thailand, Southeast Asia, and Asia. So I just want to take a few minutes to kind of explain why I think IIC is so important. In fact, that's why, oh, I see, not there. You know, I chose this title, Why I Like IIC, because I think this is an important competition which fits with an opportunity that every one of us in the room has. So let me show you what I mean. So one of the perhaps advantages I have is I graduated from MIT a few years ago, but I've also spent a lot of time in Thailand, so I'm always trying to bring those two things together. Unfortunately, 2 days ago, I was reminded how long ago it was when I graduated, so ha ha ha. Actually, this was an annoying picture, not only to get it and be reminded how long ago it was, but I asked my staff to find me on the picture, and they couldn't find me. I actually am on that picture. To make matters worse, another guy on the picture has come here and taught, and they found him. So I've changed more than him. 4 years after this picture was taken, I came to Thailand, and I've been here ever since, working in a variety of businesses, and also, more importantly, over the last 18 years or so, in trying to develop entrepreneurship. And one of the challenges that I found, I just kind of thought at the beginning we would do like we would do in Cambridge, in Boston, or like my friends in San Francisco would do, just start up. But I found out there were a couple of other challenges with that. So, you know, if you talk a little bit of theory, there's this idea of designing these ecosystems. There's a dream of designing these ecosystems, and if we fulfill that dream, we get this alignment of technology aligned with problems, aligned with capital, aligned with entrepreneurs. And if that happens, we fulfill this dream of getting new business opportunities and creating startups. We get lots of inventions. We get commercialization, innovation, and jobs. The problem is there's really been only one way that this works: war. And I'm not joking. Really, the successful ecosystems that exist today, which include Boston, Silicon Valley, and Israel, all started with a security, a defense, or a need from a war. Okay, now many of you would say, oh no, that's long gone, that's the past, and you might be right. But there's nothing more powerful about aligning these forces in the ecosystem than strong defense. And I'd like to hope that there's another way. So if you go back in this same history, you know, even venture capital, which is such a big deal these days, the original venture capitalists, these two guys were what is regarded, at least in the US, as the first formally established venture capital firm. George Dorio was a Harvard Business School professor. Carl Compton was the president of MIT. After World War II, they got together and said, hey, we got all this technology from the war. What should we do with it? Now, the important part of this isn't the war part, but the fact that most ecosystems around the world and most entrepreneurship is driven by solutions looking for problems. Okay, so if you go back to that wartime, radio, then transistors, then semiconductors, then the internet, then PCs, and so on and so forth. Now, I know apps. Okay, we're in a different world now. Apps aren't necessarily war-driven. But nonetheless, these communities were really built around that original solution looking for a problem. And we're not in that situation here. So I keep asking myself over and over and over, how do we set up an ecosystem that is built around an important problem looking for a solution? And I just want to tell you a short story about some ideas a few of us were playing with, including Brian Cotter, who's in the room. He was one of the judges earlier. A couple years ago, he and I and some impact investors, and I think somebody from a co-working space in Myanmar, and there were like 7 or 8 of us sitting around a table in Vietnam, and we had this idea. what if we could define something called a wicked problem worth working on? And we were all from Myanmar, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, so we chose the Mekong region, not Asia as a whole, not even Southeast Asia, but the Mekong region. And we said to ourselves, what if we could set this up and we would call it wicked problems worth working on, and we would use that to align all of these forces. Now, Brian, who does a lot of work with UNICEF, said you have to have an acronym that people could say. So he spent all afternoon, whip-a-wo-wo, whip-a-wo-wo. Do you remember that, Brian? Whip-a-wo-wo. So you guys should try it. It'll catch on if enough of us say it. Okay. Thank you. That was good. But if this catches on, I hope there's even a more valuable thing than another great acronym. So just imagine, the Mekong region, in this case, the region that we're talking about, has somewhere about 400 million people. So imagine we could, again, with the desire to be focused initially, to really go after a focused problem. Nonetheless, we were saying 10% of that, 10 to 50 million people. Okay? Imagine we're defining a problem, focused problem, not education, corruption, poverty. Those are broad issues. But we could define problems that were 10 to 50 million people. We wanted to encourage that they crossed national boundaries in this region that we're talking about. And this is my message to almost all of us except for anyone living in China or India. I mean, those countries are already so big. But for the rest of Asia, the countries are smaller. Shoot beyond your own national boundary. This is why I love the business grab. I know it's not necessarily inclusive innovation, but it was a great business. It's a great startup. It's not a startup from North America. It's a startup from Malaysia, and it solves a problem that is in every big city around Asia, and the traction is amazing. So imagine we define problems, 10 to 50 million people, problems across national boundaries, because most of these problems are shared by numbers of countries. And most importantly, these are problems that align entrepreneurs, investors, and other resources to form an ecosystem built around a problem rather than an ecosystem built around a solution. I hear all the time in the work I do, and many of you might as well, there is no market, ... This is said, I think, because of a misunderstanding of purchasing power, and it's certainly a misunderstanding of the challenges people seek. If we can define a well-defined problem of 10 to 50 million people, that is a great starting niche market. And almost any solution we can find in that can then grow. Because there's something like, this is one estimate, I'm sure there's many more, $700 billion in impact money looking for great entrepreneurs solving great problems. The money is there, the problems are there, the people are there. Let's adopt a mindset where we go after some of these problems. And so I'd like to ask you guys, as you're leaving here, to find a wicked problem. Okay? I know some of our teams are already doing a great job of that, but I'd like to set this as a challenge to all of us. A big problem, 10 to 50 million people crossing the boundaries of the nations or the communities you're working in, and really use these to start creating some problem-based ecosystems that we can align investors, people, and entrepreneurs. Because I think we can transform the way entrepreneurship is done, transform the way some of these problems are solved. And I think, to answer the very first comment I made here, this is one thing I love about the IIC. It really is a problem-focused challenge, the future of work. Thank you very much for being part of this.